Welcome back. Step number 1. I want to ask you, what is your biggest challenge going on right now for you? Do you want to know how to experience business growth fast? Get rid of distractions in your life and business so that you can stay focused on the things that actually really matter. Sources indicate humans have 6,250 thoughts per day. Our morning thoughts may sound like, where's my phone? What's on my calendar? I'm already late. I'm out of coffee. I'm out of tea. But throughout the day, there are other thoughts rapidly being processed in our brains that seem to be on autopilot. And it filters information in an attempt to bring focus. We know that our thoughts impact our actions, which impact our results, and the rate at which we actually can experience growth. It's easy to actually focus on the little things, but maintaining focus is critical in your pursuit of success. So some people are actually naturally gifted at focus. And for many of the other entrepreneurs, we've fallen victim to distraction. And so I remember first hearing about the life of Amy Purdy, a 19-year-old girl. And she tells her story like this. I knew there was something really wrong. I was so weak. My heart was beating out of my chest and I realized I couldn't feel my feet. I glanced down at my feet and realized they were purple. I glanced at my hand and realized they were purple. I looked in the mirror and realized my nose and cheeks were purple. I was dying, and I knew it. I was sicker than I could ever explain. She says, my parents rushed me to the hospital, and I was immediately put on life support and given a 2% chance to live. And while I was in a coma, the doctors diagnosed me with meningococcal meningitis, a vaccine-preventable blood infection. I have no idea how I got it. But because of this tiny, microscopic bacteria, over the course of the next 2.5 months, she says, I lost my spleen. I lost my kidney function. I lost the ability to hear out of my left ear. And because of the septic shock my body endured, I lost both of my legs from the knees down. And my life changed like that. And she says, I went from being a normal 19-year-old to being totally dependent on machines to live. And I didn't think it could get any worse. That is, as she says, until I saw my new legs for the first time. They looked like, she says, pipes bolted together from the plumbing department at Home Depot. Then she goes on and she says, sitting with my mom, tears streaming down both our faces, I strapped these legs on and I stood up. The thought that I had to go through life with these hunky pieces of hardware as my legs, yeah, it was depressing and overwhelming. She says, I did know then that my biggest loss would become my greatest asset. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever experienced loss or some form of disappointment and felt like you weren't sure you'd ever recover, or wondered if your business would ever be the same? And so Amy continues, and she says, I had to learn how to let go of the old Amy and embrace the new Amy. And I asked myself, if my life were a book and I was the author, how would I want this story to end? And she said, I saw myself walking gracefully, impacting and helping others, and I saw myself snowboarding again. And she says, I visualized it so strongly that I could feel the cold on my body. I could feel the wind in my face, my heart pounding as if she were actually doing it. And that is the moment, she says, her new chapter began. Now, let's be honest here. It did not go great in the beginning. And she says, I hit a little bump and my goggles went one way and my hat went another, and my legs strapped tightly to my board flew with my board down to the bottom of the mountain while her body was remaining at the top. And she says, I could have easily thought, well, I obviously can't snowboard with 2 prosthetic legs. But instead, you know what she did? She said, I thought, well, if I can figure out a way to keep these detachable body parts actually attached and get my legs to move the way I want them to, I can do this. And she says, I realize the obstacles in our life can only do 2 things. 1, stop us dead in our tracks. Or 2, force us to get creative. Amy went on to make a pair of these legs herself, and she became the first female ever to win a bronze medal in the Paralympic snowboarding. So Amy learned to let go of the old and embrace the new, focusing on her vision of success. And how'd she do this? By aligning her thoughts with her goals. She actually achieved seemingly unachievable feats, just like you can in your entrepreneurial journey. So you've heard the phrase, keep your eye on the prize. And Robin Sharma says, what you dwell on determines your destiny. Harvey Eker says, where your attention goes, your energy flows. And I love the old saying, put your attention on your intention, because what you focus on grows. Amy's story isn't just about willpower and resilience. It's a demonstration of the way your brain adapts based on what you actually focus on. So allow me to explain this, okay? I read a study that was done on London taxi drivers, and the researchers put each driver through a test of memory, and one that included being able to recall over 320 different routes, 25,000 streets, and 20,000 landmarks. It typically takes drivers 4 years of committed study to really memorize all of those different places. Can you imagine today? It seems ridiculous. I'm so dependent on my GPS, my app Waze, I couldn't imagine. So at the end of the study, the researchers compared extensive brain scans in the taxi drivers. And what they found at the end of the 4-year training period was that the part of their brain that was actually responsible for memory actually grew in size. The brain actually grows by strengthening the neural pathways. Those neural pathways that are needed after long time learning. And it's also around repetition based on the job that it's needed for. So let's simplify this. Your brain grows based on what it focuses on. Your experiences, your focus, and your attention matter. Not only in the moment, but because over time, your brain and results will grow. This is why step 1 of this entire process, the tune-in process, begins with reining in your focus on what's holding you back, or on letting in a more focused intention of what you want to create. So step 1 starts with the thoughts in your head. Remember the first H in the 3HQ framework, the first H, the first division of your HQ? Ask yourself this question: what's your current biggest challenge? And or What is your intention of what you want to create in your life and your business? I'm going to give you some examples. Is it presenting a compelling stage presentation or a keynote where the audience just erupts in applause? Is it crushing a sales call? Is it getting more leads that actually convert? Is it creating your financial budget? People not purchasing your offer, stunting revenue growth. You might be thinking, it feels like I've tried everything, but the sales just aren't rolling in. So your challenge here might actually be, what's missing in my sales process? Maybe you're thinking, hey, attracting low quality leads is causing you to sacrifice your values to accommodate the wrong leads. You might also be thinking, I've spent hours crafting my message and my content, but it just doesn't feel like it's hitting the mark. So maybe the challenge here might actually be, how can I resonate with the right people, the ones I genuinely want to serve? So maybe another one that you might be thinking is, you might be feeling a little disempowered as a CEO right now, resulting in a business model that's not aligned with what you and your life are trying to aspire to be. And you might be thinking, the big picture thinking, the exciting visionary part of being a CEO feels miles away. I'm exhausted. How many of you are feeling that way? Well, the challenge around that might be, my days are filled with endless tasks. So maybe you're aiming for a guest spot on a top-tier podcast to amplify your impact and drive audiences into action. So you might be asking yourself, do I truly have what it takes to pitch myself for the show? So in this one, you might have the challenge, it might be, how do I convey my value to this top-tier podcast? Maybe another one might be, it's figuring out how to stay relevant in your industry right now during these absolutely crazy changing times. So I want you to take a moment to really focus on your current challenge and your intention for what do you really want to create right now. Write it down on your paper. And I gotta tell you, don't play small. This is not the time to play small. You can create anything that you dream of. When you've written down your current challenge and you have this clear, specific intention around what you want to create, then advance to the second pivotal question, the next step in the tune-in process. It's now time to move to step 2 and continue your journey to unlock your growth on demand, that competitive advantage. So I'll see you in the next lesson for step 2.